Is Auston Matthews ready to leave the Maple Leafs to the promised land? And the NHL Network with a bombshell on their top 20 right wingers list. It's Leaf related. We'll get into it on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf Center podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like you want them to, but the summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone all day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. What's going on, Dave? How are we feeling on a Friday?
Feeling pretty good. I just watched a clip of Auston Matthews in full gear donning the C. It took a minute to get used to it, but it feels good. Feels good to see.
You know what? I think it looks good. Like, it feels right. I really do think it feels right. You know, like it truly is his team and has been for a couple of years. And now it's just like, okay, let's make it officially his team. And he's got the full reins now because he's got the C on his chest. And the Auston Matthews era has officially begun. We saw the the change in leadership occur on was it Wednesday morning, where I guess it's now being dubbed a peaceful transfer of power from John Tavares to Auston Matthews. And it's Matthews' team now, right? He's been kind of the leader on the ice. Now he gets a chance to be the leader off the ice for the Toronto Maple Leafs. What were a couple of your key takeaways, though, when we got to hear everybody speak? Brad Treliving was in attendance, Auston Matthews, John Tavares, obviously, the Tavares family, the Matthews family, even Mitch Marner and Morgan Rielly, Craig Berube too, in attendance for the press conference. So what were a couple of takeaways that you had from what we listened to Wednesday morning?
You know, a few people were asking me what does this kind of all mean, especially for John Tavares. Seeing that press conference, it made me believe that Tavares is willing to do whatever it is to just accomplish what he set out to do when he first came here. And that was to try to win a Stanley Cup in Toronto. And he's putting all personal desires to the side. He has done that throughout his career, but from being moved from center to wing, playing on the third line at times. Now to have the captaincy taken from him and given to Matthews, he might be the most selfless hockey player I have ever seen.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. When you really start to, add to the list of things that they've done to him, but they've asked for him to do, and he's said, yeah, for the betterment of the team. All right, let's give it a shot. Yeah, absolutely. I think selfless is a great way to describe him. First class. He's a first class guy, and even the way that he was happy to exchange captaincy over to Auston Matthews. When you watch the initial, when he took the jersey out of the box and he gave him a little pat on the chest, gave him a firm handshake, and then they held up the jersey for the first time with Matthews' jersey with the C on it. So he was smiling. He was happy about it. And, when we heard from not only John Tavares, but even Brad Treliving, it sounds as though Tavares is very on board when it came to this. And, it took him a little bit to talk about it, talk through with some friends and family, but ultimately he felt that it was the right decision for the group moving forward. He called Auston himself. He wanted to make the phone call and let him know that he was going to be giving him the captaincy. And I think that honestly is probably the best way to do it. I think it means the most coming from John, because if Matthews gets a call from anyone else, maybe he's a little uneasy about it by just thinking, well, what does John feel about it? Well, obviously, when Tavares called him himself, he didn't have to worry about it because he clearly felt, all right, if he's making the call and he's giving it to me, it's okay. So, yeah, selfless, first class. That was probably the main takeaway from the press conference. Kind of, to be honest with you, the big winner was John Tavares and his standing in Toronto and what people think of him. He was already a first class citizen, obviously, but I was listening to Chris Johnson on his podcast saying that, his what he did and said at the press conference might be his like defining moment as captain of the Maple Leafs. Like just knowing that the time is now, acknowledging that, and transferring the captaincy over to Auston Matthews might be the best thing that he did as captain. Now, I would definitely argue the overtime winner in game 6 to advance them to the second round for the first time in 20 years probably supersedes that, but just goes to show, how graciously he has gone through this process, and you could see it. And it's not fake. Like you could see that Tavares is genuinely happy to let Auston kind of take the reins here. And not that Tavares is going to take a back seat. He's still going to be wearing a letter. He's still going to be an assistant captain. And I'm sure he'll help, Matthews in any ways, be a good shoulder to lean on, pick his brain a little bit if need be.
Mhm.
But I think it's the right thing to do. And they're at that time where it makes sense. New coach, new GM. Let's get a new captain involved, and the guy who kind of has been the leader, unofficial leader for the last couple of years. Now he's officially the head honcho here in Toronto.
Yeah, it's just signals now. It's kind of full circle where I was listening to Brendan Shannon talk about this whole, transitioning to Auston Matthews, and it kind of made sense hearing him talk about how, a lot was thrown at him when he was 18, brought into the NHL. Made the most sense to not throw something like this, giving him the chance to kind of grow into that role. I think it's the way that was explained to me. I'm like, okay, like it makes a lot more sense versus what our thoughts were like a few years ago, literally 5 years ago, when it was Tavares and not Matthews getting the captaincy.
Yeah.
One of the few things I think this management group has gotten right. Like when you like the Shannon plan, like it's probably one of those things that has worked out better than I think expected.
Yeah, I mean, whether Tavares, Rielly, kind of a coin flip at that point. But if it were Rielly, then you may not have this succession plan in place. I think
Exactly.
like would still be, very entrenched where it would be his team, whereas it makes sense to make that transfer from Tavares to Matthews specifically. But look, one thing that I did know that I also noticed that was echoed between Auston, between Tavares, and between general manager Brad Treliving is, they all mentioned that the goal is to win a Stanley Cup, and that's something obviously that every Leaf fan wants to hear. And they mentioned that what's going on with the team is whatever they're doing is for the betterment of the team and hopes to bring a Stanley Cup to the city of Toronto. So hopefully, I don't know exactly how much things will change now that, Tavares is officially the captain, and how much it'll change things on the ice, in the room. Will there be a bit of a culture change? I don't know. We'll see how things kind of shake out. But it sounds like everyone's on board and, talking about bringing Stanley Cups to Toronto, and that's what people want to do. Does get me excited because that's the goal. That's the ultimate prize in this sport, right? Why don't we take a break? We can come back, continue to kind of break down what we heard. Mitch Marner was in attendance. Morgan Rielly was in attendance. What do we think about that? And who else will be wearing a letter this upcoming season? We'll chat about that as well, because that was discussed by Brad Treliving too. So we'll get to that. And boy, oh boy, Dave, did the NHL Network give us some spicy Leafs talk that we'll get to in a little bit as well. That's all coming up next on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sports and like I want them to. FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I got to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. You can go and you can bet all of your favorite NHL futures to begin the season. Think the Maple Leafs are going to get 100+ points? There's a wager for that. You think John Tavares or Auston Matthews, rather, the new captain, is going to go over 55.5 goals this year? There's a wager for that too over on FanDuel. So head to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the Locked On Network. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the rest of the month of August. And then starting in September, once training camp rolls around, we're back to daily coverage 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. So make sure you find us wherever you get your podcast at, Locked On Leafs. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't done that either. We're still on a race to 10,000 followers. Once we get to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, we're giving away another jersey. So we're not particularly close. Like we had like 5,700 or something last I checked. So we still got a little ways to go. But the quicker y'all sub up, and there's a lot of people, a lot of unsubscribed views we get on a daily basis. The quicker you subscribe, the quicker one of you lucky listeners can get yourselves a Maple Leafs jersey. All right, so Auston Matthews era officially beginning in Toronto as of Wednesday. He was given the captaincy by John Tavares. It was a peaceful transfer of power, not a stripping of the sea, but a transfer of power from Tavares to Auston Matthews. In attendance was also Morgan Rielly and Mitch Marner. And one of the questions, Dave, that was asked to the general manager, which it's interesting because I feel like the coach would be a good person to ask as opposed to the GM. But I guess they all probably picked the leadership and the captains and whatnot, especially with Berube being, rather new maybe. But they asked like, okay, well, who's wearing the A? And they did say that for certainty, Tavares will be wearing an assistant's captain jersey. He will have an A, but the other A was unspoken for. And apparently they still have to figure out the rest of the equation when it comes to that. What did you make of that answer? Not having an exact answer for what the leadership group will look like or who will be wearing letters going forward. Did that make you feel some type of way or what?
Well, the one, like, it's like Morgan Rielly, you would think that he would have been, we talked about, Morgan Rielly almost like a lock for one of the assistant captain roles. And
Yeah.
I just also think that it goes to show how much they kind of really want to rethink the whole leadership, maybe the whole leadership group in general, right? Like they'll probably say like all these guys are good leaders, and all that. But at the end of the day, I do think that it was interesting that Craig Berube didn't talk more about it because it is something that is a big thing with coaches. But like I remember Kyle Dubas was big on like leading the leader, like he was the guy putting together the leadership meetings. He was like front and center in those. So I'm assuming Brad Treliving has a pretty big hand in all of it. And I just did find it curious that Rielly wasn't one of the go-to. Yeah, he's an assistant captain for us.
Did you find it weird that Willie was not in attendance?
Yeah, I mean, look, it would have been nice if he was there. I think there was some sort of like I saw on his Instagram he was doing some sort of golf thing. I don't know if that was just something he was promoting. I have no idea. It would have been nice if he was there, but like at the end of the day, like I think the guys who were in town were the ones that ended up going, like Marner and Rielly have been around.
It's not a big deal. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill, but if Willie wanted to be included in the new leadership group, like technically, he is the longest tenured Maple Leaf, right? Like he's the one who's got the contract for the next 8 seasons. He's going to be here longer than all of them. And if he wants to, get more responsibility because he's making a heck of a lot more money than he was previously, maybe he could be part of the leadership group, or maybe he could have been there. Again, it's not a massive deal that he wasn't. I'm not saying it means he's not a good teammate or anything like that. Just seemed like, like those are the 5 guys that I think of when I think of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and just he was like noticeably not there where the other ones were there. You know what I mean? Again, it's not a big deal. It was just something I noticed and thought I'd ask you if you thought anything of it yourself.
Yeah, I don't think it's funny. Like, I don't think anyone like, I didn't see anyone talk about the fact that that Nylander wasn't there. So I'm sure, like, for him, we know Willie's just gonna do what Willie does, right? It's kind of his thing. We don't hear too much about like his leadership either, which I know some people probably wish he was probably more involved with that, but I don't know. I'd rather him just do the things on the ice that make him good.
Fair enough.
There's enough guys that could take on that stuff.
It is going to be interesting to see what they do with that other alternate captain's label, right? The other A, because if one's going to be on, Tavares's chest every night, the captaincy is going to be on Matthews' chest every night. I mean, that really leaves Mitch Marner and Morgan Rielly. And I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see if they alternate the way that Marner and Matthews did for the last couple of years, or if Berube comes in and says, no, that's kind of gimmicky. I'm going to pick one, and doesn't mean the other one's not worthy of being part of the leadership group. Just, you can only give out 2. So, a two-way, 2B kind of type of thing. So, and that'll be kind of fascinating, something to kind of keep an eye on, I suppose. Again, Treliving said that they still plan on sitting down and talking about just that. They haven't necessarily made a decision as to who else was going to be wearing letters. However, there was discussion that was quickly shut down about Mitch Marner, and when he spoke with the media briefly about his contract, someone obviously asked the question, which you got to do.
Yep.
Quickly said that's not what today is all about. Today's about Auston and him getting the captaincy, and about John being a class act, and really did not want to talk about that at all. So I don't know if that if you read into that at all as things are not talks are not ongoing or what, but he was not interested in that conversation yesterday.
No, and it's again, it kind of goes to the point I've been making for a while that I think he is going to do his best to deflect this every chance that someone gets to ask the question, right? So nothing really surprised me on that. I think I liked his response and saying like today is just not for like to talk about me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I did like that response. It's a fair response. It was also just something we also expected.
Yeah. Very true. Very, very true. Was there anything else that kind of stood out to you that anyone else said throughout the press conference, whether it was the 3 head guys, or whether you heard something from Mo or from Craig Berube or any of the side scrums? Anything else jump out to you?
2 quick things. I mean, Matthews kind of, I don't know if I've ever really heard him say like he wants to be a Leaf for like almost
for
like
life.
a Leaf for life. Yeah,
He did say he wants to be a Leaf for life. Yeah, we kind of buried the lead with that one, but those words did come out of his mouth for what seems like the first time ever, for sure.
Yeah, and like for a guy who only signed a 4-year contract extension, it was like interesting that he said.
Yeah, but Dave, that was before Arizona left. The extension was done before Arizona left. Now there's no Arizona for him to go to, so he might as well stay here, right?
Yeah, Toronto's his home now.
Hey, you're captain. Set your roots, buddy.
Exactly.
The other thing that I absolutely thought was hilarious was a lot of the memes that were coming out surrounding all of this, and people photoshopping Matthews being bald within 2 years. and looking at like what Sundin looked like when he first got the captaincy. And then obviously Sundin went very bald by the end of his tenure with the Maple Leafs. And people saying, all right, now that Matthews has the C, you know what you got to do. It's time to take out the razor and give it the old Sundin. Give it the old Messier. It's time, buddy. You got the captaincy. It's time to grow up and do it. Could you imagine if like day one, he just rips out onto the ice, bucketless and no hair at all? He won't, but that'd be hilarious.
It'd be hilarious, but also just be very concerning. like let it be natural if it's going to happen. Hold on to it as long as you can, Austin.
Yeah, absolutely. They should totally hang on to it, right, Dave? Hang on to it as long as you can.
As long as you can.
All right, we'll awkwardly move past that situation for you.
There
was there one other thing? You said there was one other thing too.
Brad Treliving was asked about Yanni Hakanpää.
Oh yeah. Okay, go on with that.
He's just like, we're sorting it out.
Yeah,
Brad, it's pretty simple. Are you signing him or you not? Like, I feel like there was some things revealed in that knee report when Steve Simmons put it out that maybe the Leafs were initially okay with, and maybe after further review, maybe not okay with.
Yeah, reading between the lines, it's kind of seems like what happened there. So, like, what if Steve Simmons never put out that report? Do they not take that extra deep dive, and like none of this happens, or like he comes to camp and all of a sudden it's like, oh, oops, I'm hurt, I can't play.
I'm wondering if they were just trying to avoid that, like the Klingberg situation where they bring in a guy, maybe he's got something, but
then why did he sign to a 2-year deal? Like that's what I mean. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense unless they didn't know or didn't realize it was as bad as it was.
Apparently the Leafs doctors cleared him. Like Stevens did say the Leafs doctors cleared him, but maybe they're just like, are we sure about this? Like, are we like,
you sure about that? Are you sure about that?
There must be some other clause. I don't know if it's like an insurance thing. I don't know if it's like something else with the contract that's kind of a bit of a snafu with it. Like, it feels like it's probably not the agreement. It's probably something to do with that injury and maybe the insurance of that contract that has to be worked out.
Did that are you sure about that go right over your head, by the way?
A little bit.
Do you not know that meme? You don't know that meme? Tim Robinson? No? All right. Well, you need to watch some pop culture more. I don't know what to tell you. All right. But yes, absolutely. That was we finally, I guess, got a slight update, but didn't really clear up the Hakanpää situation. We're still not too sure what's going on there. All right, let's take another break. When we get back, we got to talk about the NHL's top 20 right winger ranking. It was a spicy meatball. We'll get into it next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the price you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday throughout the rest of the month of August, and then back to daily coverage Monday through Friday once the training camp hits and all the way through the preseason, the postseason, and into the first bit of the offseason as well. But there's been a bunch of news this week, so it's been a really nice, newsy week for us, stuff to really dive into. And the NHL Network, they do this every year. They put out their top 20 lists for each position, and they decided to start with the right wingers today. And
Was it
boy,
wingers or just wing? Like just was it right wingers or just wingers?
I thought it was right wingers, like specifically right wingers. Wait, I could have sworn? Here, I got the tweet,
I think
so
it
I
was
can
the
pull
way
it up.
that they worded it. I think it's 20 top. I mean, I'll put. I actually have the.
Oh,
quotes
you're
up.
right. It says top 20 wings right now. So maybe I just like when I read that
Like,
passively, I read it
what
as
a
right
dumb way to
winger.
word that. 20 wings right now. Like,
Yeah. Well, what did you think we meant? Like from 4 years ago? Like obviously you're putting out a top 20 list. Of course it means right now. Like what did you do? Or did you take this from the vault from 3 years ago, from 8 months ago? Yeah, what a dumb way to word it. You're right. So it's wingers, top 20 wingers. Regardless, massive controversy in Leafland over this ranking, over this list. Do you have the list pulled up?
I got it right here.
All right, let's pull it up because if you're watching on YouTube, you can see exactly where things kind of get squirrely from a Maple Leafs perspective. So at number 1, then Nikita Kucherov. I think we could both get behind that. Correct?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Hard trophy candidate. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Matthew Tkachuk at number 2 makes some sense. I can get behind it. Mikko Rantanen, David Pasternak. Rantanen over Pasternak is actually kind of a low key savage move. I don't hate it, but it is interesting to see.
I love Bruins fans losing their minds over it, so I'm happy with it.
We'll take it, absolutely. Artemi Panarin came in at number 5. Jason Robertson, brother of Nick Robertson, came in at number 6. Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov at number 7. And then at number 8, your first Maple Leaf hits the list. Top 20 wings in the NHL. At number 8, it was William Nylander, not Mitch Marner, cracking the list. William Nylander at number 8, Sam Reinhart at number 9, and then Mitch Marner comes in at number 10. So according to NHL Network, the NHL Network, William Nylander is the better player, is the better winger than Mitch Marner. How do we feel about this meatball take, Dave?
A little surprising, I'll say, but I think it's a lot of recency bias in terms of Nylander had the better year last year.
Well, to be fair, Dave, as much as we just berated them on the name, it does say right now, which would indicate recency bias.
It is recency bias. I think it's like one of those where if you're a Leafs fan right now, and I had to throw it to you, who's better, Nylander or Marner, right now? I'm curious of how people would choose. I think more people would choose Nylander because of the way they feel about Mitch Marner.
Well, yes, and I know that's the case. Unless it's the it could be the loud minority, but like I quote tweeted this and I put it up on my Twitter account, and I was like, gonna be talking about this on Locked On Leafs, but curious, what do you guys think? There's a lot of people that were like, yeah, of course, like William Nylander's a 2-time 40 goal scorer. Call me when Marner scores 40 goals, as if that's the only thing that matters. It's like,
Yeah.
Marner's still a, perennial 90-point Selke candidate. Like, it's not as though Marner's nothing. Like, this guy was first team all right winger twice, like in the last 4 years. Like, it's not as though Marner is absolute trash. It's so funny how, this contract dispute and the poor, playoff that he just came off of, all of a sudden people think that this guy's chopped liver and, not still a top, to me, he's a top 5 winger in the game. Like I do believe he is. When you consider an all around game, is Willie a better scorer? Absolutely. But Marner is the better player. Full 200-foot player. Not even close. Not even close. Like Marner could still score 30, but he'll also set up 60 or 70 and flirt with 100 points and also kill penalties. He'll be the main driver on the power play. He'll set you up. This is a guy who plays very well in his own end. Like I said, the guy was legitimately runner-up for the Selke Trophy. Like, I just don't understand how the NHL Network buried Marner so low on this list. I think Nylander at 8 is okay. Marner is buried way too low here.
I
He is
think that's
definitely more than a top
more
10
so
winger.
the issue is how far down they put Marner. Like,
Well, I mean, it's both. Like, you put Marner so far down, but you also like ranked Nylander ahead of Marner, so it's a double whammy.
yeah. Here's my thing on Marner. Yeah, I would say all around game. There's no doubt Marner. There aren't many wingers getting into the Selke Trophy conversation every year like Marner has. Like that's just very tough to do. My thing with Nylander is Marner's the better playmaker. Nylander's got tools I think Marner doesn't have. He's got a better shot. He's much better at possessing the puck and moving the puck, like skating wise.
I don't know
I,
if I could get on board with that.
if I'm asking one of those two guys to take it from one end to the other, there's no doubt in my mind I'm giving that to William Nylander.
Yeah, but that's not necessary. But if you had to task one guy to like put a puck on a string, who is it? To dangle in a phone booth, who is it?
I still think it's Nylander.
Oh, Marner for me. You're forgetting how good this guy is.
No, I'm not. But I'm also
You're falling into the trap of the simpletons out there, Dave.
No, because
falling into the trap of the NHL Network.
Because whenever I see the puck on Nylander's stick, I think something's gonna happen. Like no doubt he might do it himself. And we've seen it countless times. He'll put his shoulder down, go to the net, score a goal. Like that's something you don't see Marner do.
But that's not what his game's all about. But there's also a lot of things you see Marner do that Nylander doesn't. Like
1,000%. Yes, he does make. Oh,
they're different players.
There's no doubting that Marner will. If you're telling me last minute of the game, you're up by one. Which winger am I saying out there? It's 1,000% going to be Marner, no doubt.
They're different players. Like this isn't breaking news that these guys have different skill sets. Obviously, like that's kind of why they both complement the Leafs well. If they had everyone who could shoot a puck but no one to distribute it, well, might not go so well. Right. So like it's not breaking news. So when people are coming up to me and tweeting at me, well, one's got 40 goals twice. Literally, someone told me, message me when Marner has a 40-goal season, as if that's the only way we sit here and rank these guys. What's the point of ranking them if we're just going to go by goals? Like we're talking about players, like all around game. Marner is a far more polished player than William Nylander. Is William Nylander a more power forward, a more powerful offensive threat when he has the puck? Is he more of a threat to score? Absolutely. But Marner is also a threat in his own right, where Marner can suck people in and then scoot the puck off for a nice, tapping goal or a beautiful one-timer for Auston Matthews. Like let's not sit here and berate the guy. Not that you are, but like the NHL Network having Marner all the way down at 10 is
I also just wonder how much the playoff performance put Marner down over. I mean, Nylander was hurt.
Nylander had migraines for 3 games. He didn't even play 3. At least Marner played all 7.
Yeah, but he wasn't Mitch Marner through that series. We know that.
No, he wasn't. And that's been a big issue for him his whole career. That is very clear and very evident. But
I wonder if that's something that pushed, like that's part of the reason he was pushed down is because when the chips were down, he wasn't the same player.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Okay. So Nylander, I could maybe get behind and say like Nylander has been the better playoff performer. Therefore, he should be considered the better player because when the chips are down, he's the one who's performed better. Okay. If that's the argument, I could see it. But if you asked me which player has the higher ceiling at their heights, at their best, who's the better player? To me, it's Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner is the better player when at his peak than Nylander at his peak.
I can get behind that.
That's my point. Like I think when Mitch Marner's playing at his best, he's playing with confidence. He's playing with zip. He's dancing around in the offensive end. He's picking pucks off of people. He's getting in lanes. That's when Mitch Marner's at his best. And unfortunately, no, we have not seen it really a lot in the playoffs. But we've seen it a lot, throughout his career. We've also seen Nylander fade for a lot of his career. Like this is the first year Nylander's actually put up more offense than Mitch Marner, literally in their entire careers. Marner has outperformed Nylander, not from a goals, but from a points perspective each and every year. And many times has Marner, I think, has had more goals than Nylander too.
I only say
So,
two things to that. Mitch Marner has played with Auston Matthews predominantly throughout his career. I wonder how much that changes if Nylander got the opportunity.
well,
And
yeah, it's gone well. But
yeah, and also you said too on the power play, everything runs through Mitch. So Nylander's actually in a way his production is relied upon on Mitch Marner to distribute the puck to him as well.
mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I just think when you're like I hate those comparisons too because it's not like you're comparing the same type of player. You're not comparing a guy like two guys who can score 40 goals. Like one clearly has scored 40 goals. One doesn't score 40 goals because that's not where he's meant to do. He is meant to set up other guys to score those goals. So I think that's those comparisons. Like I did see those people commenting on anything. I'm just like the 40 goal argument's not enough. There's got to be you got to be a little more. You got to include a lot more than just that if you're going to make the argument that one's better than the other.
Well, and this year, if he would have played all 82 games, he is on track for 3 straight 30-plus goal seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, what are we talking about here? If the guy was healthy and played every single game for the last 3 years, we're looking at 30-plus goals and 100 points per 82 games. And a Selke nomination to go with it. Like, what are we talking about?
Well, can I also just say one other thing? You've got two Toronto Maple Leaf wingers in the top 10. Mm-hmm. Granted, probably some would expect them to be higher than that. I actually have seen some arguments. People said Marner not being in the top 5 is a little ludicrous. But can we just take a moment to say any other team, the only two teams that have guys in the top 2, multiple players in the top 10, Florida, Toronto.
Yeah.
Nobody else does. Right?
Look how many of those guys, too, are in the Atlantic Division. Kucherov, Tkachuk, Pasternak, Nylander, Reinhart, Marner. 6 of the top 10 wingers on this list are in the Leafs division.
I think the Atlantic Division is pretty good. And I wonder how many Oilers fans were pissed that Zach Hyman was 11th on the list. After
right. So, hey, if we're going by goals, right? Hyman should have been higher than Nylander. Ask me, hey, buddy, call me when Nylander scores 50.
Yeah.
If that's what we're going by. You know what I mean?
Like it was also interesting. Like Philip Forsberg, 14th. I think Forsberg's such an underrated player for what he has to work with in Nashville.
Yeah.
He's Jake Gensel's 16th on the list. That's interesting too.
Isn't it weird seeing Ovechkin so low?
Yeah, number 19, and people were pissed about that he's on the list.
Oh, that he's on the list?
I literally saw somebody say, why is Jesper Bratt on the list over Ovechkin? I'm just like, what are we doing here? Ovechkin.
I don't know.
Once Ovechkin started going last year, oh boy, he was so hard to stop. He just had a really crappy start to the year.
But again, all he does is all he cares about is scoring goals now. He's not necessarily playing elite defense here.
Yeah, that's true.
It's apples and oranges when you're trying to those two particular Jesper Bratt versus Alex Ovechkin. It's like, okay, one is more of a playmaker and one's more of a pure goal scorer, and that's it. So it's tough to make those comparisons, but still, Mitch Marner at number 10 is I'm sorry, but Mitch Marner's a better player than Jason Robertson. He is. That's to me, that's the swap. I think Marner hit probably at 6 is where that fits for me. I'll take Kucherov, Tkachuk, Rantanen, Pasternak, and probably also Artemi Panarin ahead of him. But then that's it. I'll take Marner over Kaprizov. I'll take Marner over Nylander. I'll take Marner over Sam Reinhart. I'll take Marner over Jason Robertson. When I'm talking about not necessarily as what I want this player on my team, but like as a just in a vacuum, who's a better player? It is Mitch Marner. He's got the highest ceiling, at least the out of all those guys.
Fine, if you're just looking at, I mean, what clearly gives Robertson I guess maybe people look at it as his playoff numbers because they're pretty good. But like his regular season numbers, he went from 109 points 2 years ago to 80.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a pretty drastic drop in production for a player like that.
I'm curious.
29 points like that, and it's played the same number of games.
Now we're going down a path I did not plan on going down, but I am curious. Hockey Reference has like their point share system.
Yep.
I would love to know where these players sit in terms of point share. Yeah, I'm looking it up just to see where some of these guys sit, because like that's you could argue that's what we should be looking at, I suppose, is like point shares, because that adds, it's almost like WAR for those who aren't aware. It's like your wins above replacement, but for hockey. I don't know the exact metric they use to get it, but it's like that for baseball, wins above replacement, and it's a stat that really I only actually see it tracked on like Hockey Reference. But anyways, I'm going to just quickly look and see where Mitch Marner. But he was injured for most of the season, so it's done by cumulatively as opposed to like a per game. Yeah. So let me just quickly just see though.
It's funny how many people are not like a lot of people believe Tkachuk is way too high on the list, which didn't have a great year.
Could be.
But like it's very I love seeing the comments and how people are reacting to this. Not many people complaining about how 2 Leafs being the top 10, which I'm very surprised about.
Yeah, well, I think that these guys just get a lot of love ultimately, just because they're pretty good players. It's not like they don't deserve to be there. Like, I think Willie deserves to be in the top 10 conversation. I still believe that Marner should be higher than that, but
he's in the top 10 at least.
They're both in the top 10.
Yeah. So be very, and what I can't wait to see, what's the top center is going to look like.
Is this just defense? No. Top center will be a very difficult thing to show. So I'm looking at defensive point shares. So apparently Sam Reinhart had the 3rd highest defensive point shares among forwards. Is that true? That's crazy if true.
It is pretty crazy.
If true.
You don't think about that when a guy scores 57 goals.
No. Yanni Hakanpää actually had the same defensive point share as Connor McDavid and Josh Manson. Funny enough. True story. But anyway, I
Leafs guy.
Yeah. But we should probably just let this one be, I suppose. We're running up onto like 45 minutes. I'm very curious
to see what other people think about this list, though.
Yeah. Let us know down below your thoughts. Nylander over Marner. Is that, did the NHL Network get it right, or is that a slap in the face to Mitch Marner? I would love to hear your thoughts below. But that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. You can find us wherever you get your podcast from. And you can also find us on X at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. And follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We will be back for you guys on Monday. Enjoy the weekend, everybody. And again, we'll be back on Monday. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.